Most people watch Brad Holmes' press conference and thought, okay, nothing new, typical GM speak. But I went back through the whole thing, and I'm telling you, Holmes said more in that press conference than people are giving him credit for. He told us exactly how the Lions are approaching this draft. You just have to know what to listen for. All that and more coming up next on Motown Exile. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Motown Exile, Detroit sports anywhere Exile takes you. My name's Ryan Relkin. I want to talk about Brad Holmes' press conference today, which dropped a little bit earlier, and I want to talk about a few things that I went back through and I noticed that maybe other people didn't notice. And the first one that we're going to talk about really sets the tone for the entire show that I'm going to present to you today. The first clip I'm going to play for you is about the NFL owners' meetings in Palm Beach, Florida, in which Brad Holmes stayed home. Here's what he had to say.
Well, it was really more so in the past where I've gotten for our process. It's a lot of time that you miss. And so by the time that you get back, I'm kind of in a makeup mode because of all the time that you miss for our process. So that's why I just said, look, in order for me to kind of try to avoid being in that makeup mode, because now you hop into draft meetings with the scouts and blah, 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 and it just keeps rolling. But you miss a good chunk of time for us. And so that's what went into it. Sure.
So one of the things that Lions fans were frustrated about this offseason were the lack of moves in the salary cap situation. So many Lions fans are asking, are the Lions financially stable? Brad Holmes had this to say when he was asked about it.
Look, every single year is different. You just don't know. But yeah, there were some things that we are currently navigating through, but I do think that they're good problems that we are navigating through. And, I would much rather have the good problems that we have to navigate through, whatever the term I use, financial constraints, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, I think they're good problems. I'd rather have those problems than the other way. But
now I want to give you my honest take on this one, because I think it can be taken a multitude of ways. So he says good problem. And for the most part, I agree with him. I think that it is a good problem that the Lions have a core that they can rely on, that they have one of the best cores in the National Football League, and they have a core that most teams would probably trade for if they could, as it pertains to the Lions. Now, on the other hand, I think that there are some things that could be concerning to fans, and I understand that. But for the most part, I'm going to give Brad the benefit of the doubt on this one, and I'm going to watch very closely what happens at pick number 17. So one of the things that I think actually gets lost in a lot of the mock drafts and simulated drafts and offseason moves is how each team individually evaluates talent. And I think a lot of that mystery becomes clear during the draft. And I think if you look back, and I talked about this on a recent episode, if you look back at past drafts, Brad Holmes has not been afraid to look at the best player available. Now, in some cases, that might not be a player that, to us, the fans, that the Lions need. But at the same time, if you want to say, go for a need and then draft an okay player and then pass on a future Pro Bowler or Hall of Famer, I think most of us would agree we would rather have the player who is at a position that maybe isn't a position of need, but is such a good player that they just can't help but make the team better. And that just might be the most important thing that Brad Holmes told us about during this press conference. So this next clip on what the Lions will do at number 17 is getting a lot of attention. Lions fans, I think, need to hear this before Thursday when the draft comes up next week, because there's been a lot of speculation about whether the Lions are going to reach for a position of need at 17. Edge rusher, offensive tackle, some people even saying maybe a quarterback. I haven't heard that, but maybe even that's something that could be on the board. And Holmes was asked directly about how he handles the pressure to fill a need versus taking the best player available. Here's what he said.
Actually, I think sometimes you can get in trouble by doing that, just because you might start to reach for a certain player because you feel like you need that position, and you never want to feel that way when you select a player. You pass up a really good player that you liked even more, but there is a question mark on your roster, so you just go ahead and you get that player that you weren't as excited about. It's hard to sleep at. I know for me, it's hard to sleep at night when you do that, when you don't really get the player that you really, really wanted because you reach for a need. And if that reach You already reached for it. So you already reached for a player that you weren't as fired up, but he fit a certain position. And then what if the player shows or demonstrates the reason why you weren't as fired up about him? So now you've reached for the guy, and now the guy's not even performing up to standards, the same reason why you had a reservation about him. Now you're really in trouble. So that's why I think you got to be careful with that.
So here's what I have to say about this. Brad Holmes knows more than I know about building a professional football team. Now, I might not always agree with the moves that he makes, with the decisions that he makes. I also don't have all the information. So I'm kind of making a decision based on what I see and what I know versus a full depth of information that Brad Holmes has. And there's been so much noise this week, combine numbers shifting, injury reports, teams trying to manipulate each other's boards before the draft. And Holmes is essentially saying, we cut through all that. We look at the film doesn't change. And for Lions fans, I think that should actually be reassuring because it means that they're not going to get caught up in the hype around a player who ran a great 40. They're going to trust what they've seen on film. That's how Holmes has built this roster, and that's how I expect them to approach pick number 17. So we know that Brad Holmes and the Lions front office, their evaluatory team, they really look at the film. They trust the film. They say the film doesn't lie. Brad basically said that in those comments. And so we have to understand that he's telling us exactly how they're going to look at player evaluation and then player selection coming up in this draft. And so they're going to really trust what the film tells them. They're going to trust the eyes that are looking at that film, addressing the needs that the team needs, assessing what the team needs. And so I think that it shouldn't come as any surprise when the Lions take a player that maybe we didn't expect them to take. Like maybe there is a stud safety that's available at pick 17. Or maybe there's a player that's available who is a cornerback who is starting to drop in the draft and the Lions move up a couple places to get him. I will not be surprised if the Lions do any of those things. Now, here's this final clip from today's press conference in Allen Park. Brad Holmes meeting with the media, talking about the draft as we are just a few days out from the NFL Draft 2026. And I think this one's going to make people very, very happy. And he said that this is one thing that he thinks changes the whole conversation because everything that we've talked about so far, the film, the BPA philosophy, the financial discipline, all of it sounds like a patient, methodical approach. And it is. But then Holmes was asked one more question, and the answer was not what I expected. He was asked, if a generational talent is there, would the Lions be willing to trade up and get him? Listen to what he said.
Brad, organizationally, if there was a player out there, obviously not a quarterback, who you thought could put you over the top, even though there's no guarantee you'd get to the Super Bowl, would you, for lack of a better term, after picks, go all in, whatever word you want to use? If you guys felt that there was a guy out there that would, in your mind, pretty close guarantee get to the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. Yeah, if it's the right guy, yeah. I mean, you guys know me. I feel like you guys get mad at me sometimes. I do that too much sometimes. But no, if we have that kind of conviction for a player, absolutely. We're gonna go and get him.
Just two housekeeping things. The fifth-year option.
And there it is, no hesitation. And I want you all to be careful not to overread this. GMs are smart, and he might be actually saying this publicly to create uncertainty to make other teams second guess themselves before Thursday. That is absolutely part of this game. But I also think there's something real in it because it fits with everything else he said. He's methodical. He trusts the film. He won't reach for need. But if the film on a player is undeniable, like it was with Jahmyr Gibbs, if they've watched that guy 100 times and they believe in him completely, Brad Holmes is telling us he will go get that player. He will mortgage picks to do it if he thinks that player can make that kind of a difference. And honestly, I think that should excite Lions fans. It's going to be very interesting to see what they're going to do on Thursday. And I genuinely think, based on everything I heard today, this front office is more prepared for this draft than maybe any draft they've had under Brad Holmes. But that's enough of what I think. I wonder what you think. Please leave a comment in the comments below. Let us know where you think the Lions will or should go. What do you think of Brad's words today at his press conference talking about the NFL draft? Also, as I said earlier, please, if you like what you heard today, slap that like button and also subscribe if you haven't already done so. We're looking to get to 1,000 subscribers by the beginning of June, so we hope to have you join us as part of the family in Exile here on Motown Exile. Well, that just about does it for today's episode of Motown Exile, Detroit sports, anywhere Exile takes you. My name's Ryan Relkin, and we'll see you soon.